The 19-year-old alien princess offended the human, so he turned and walked away without a word. At 19, he was young for an engineer with his experience, but he had already made a name for himself. People said he had a gift for understanding things that no one else could. Ships that others could not repair, machines that had been left broken for decades, Ethan could fix them all. He had never expected to meet a princess on his travels. In fact, he had never cared much about royalty. Titles and crowns meant little to him. He cared about work, learning, and making life a little easier for everyone. But the mission he had been assigned to now was different. The council on his home planet had asked him to go to an alien world, a planet called Urindor, and make contact with its leaders. And the leader he was to meet first was the 19-year-old Princess Lyra. Ethan stepped out of the transport ship into the grand hall of the palace. The hall was enormous, stretching high above his head. Light poured in from crystal windows that curved along the walls. Alien symbols glowed softly along the floor, and strange machines hummed quietly in the background. The air smelled faintly of flowers and metal. It was beautiful, but Ethan kept his attention on the task. He had come here to work, not to admire architecture. Princess Lyra waited at the far end of the hall, standing on a raised platform. She was tall for her age, her long hair a soft shade of silver that shimmered in the sunlight. Her eyes, a striking green, scanned the room as if daring anyone to approach. Her lips curved in a faint, almost mocking smile. She wore robes that flowed around her like liquid metal, showing the symbols of her royal family. When Ethan walked into the hall, he felt every gaze upon him. The alien attendants whispered among themselves, their voices musical but strange to human ears. He had expected formal greetings and polite conversation, but what greeted him instead was an edge of arrogance from the princess herself. "Ah," Lyra said, her voice clear and sharp. "You must be the famous human engineer. I have heard tales about your work. They say you can repair things no one else can touch. I wonder if that is true or if the humans are simply foolish enough to believe it." Ethan paused. Her words were sharp but not openly hostile. Still, the tone carried offense. He did not respond immediately. Instead, he studied her. There was intelligence in her eyes and perhaps even curiosity, but there was also pride. It was clear she expected him to speak, to defend his people, to bow or make some show of respect. But Ethan did not move quickly. "I am Ethan Clark," he said finally, his voice calm. "I came to work with you and your people, that is all." Lyra's smile widened slightly, as if she had anticipated a more complicated answer. "Work with us. You humans think so highly of yourselves. You believe your machines and ideas are superior to ours. How amusing." Ethan remained still, letting the words hang in the air. He could have argued, could have explained that humans learned from others and adapted quickly. He could have reminded her that it was not arrogance but curiosity that had driven him across the stars. But instead, he simply looked at her, steady and silent. The attendants began to shift uncomfortably. Whispers ran through the hall. No human had ever stood in front of Lyra like this before. Usually visitors would bow, stammer, or at least speak to show respect. Ethan did none of these things. "Are you deaf, human?" Lyra asked, her voice raising slightly. She had clearly expected some reaction, some sign of fear or respect. Ethan did not answer. He simply turned his back to her and began to walk away. The room fell into silence. It was as if time itself had paused. Every eye in the hall followed him, shocked. The princess herself froze, staring at the back of the human as he moved calmly toward the exit. He did not rush or hesitate. He did not glance back. He walked away as if he were leaving a minor annoyance behind, and that annoyed everyone even more. Lyra's pride was wounded. No one had ever dared to ignore her, much less walk away in silence. She felt a flush of anger, followed quickly by confusion. Why had he not spoken? Why had he not begged for her favor or answered her insult? It was unlike anything she had seen. When Ethan reached the door to the transport chamber, he paused for a moment. He did not look back. He had no need to. The hall was behind him, full of shocked faces, full of whispers and questions he did not care to answer. His focus was on the work ahead. He was here to learn, to help, and to observe, not to fight for respect or prove a point. As he stepped outside into the garden of the palace, he let out a quiet breath. The garden was unlike any he had ever seen. Alien plants stretched high into the sky, their leaves glowing faintly. The air was warm, carrying the scent of flowers and something electric that he could not name. Small pools of water reflected the sunlight in sparkling patterns. He walked among the plants, careful not to touch anything that might be dangerous. Despite himself, he could feel eyes on him. Lyra had followed him, not openly, but from a distance. He did not turn, he did not need to. She could see him clearly, moving through the garden without fear, without haste. She could see the way his hands worked as he adjusted the strap of his pack, the way he studied the ground and the plants. There was confidence in every motion, quiet and natural. For the first time, Lyra felt something unfamiliar, curiosity mixed with respect. This human was not like the others. He did not seek to impress, to intimidate, or to please. He moved with his own mind, guided by his own purpose. That alone made him dangerous or fascinating. Ethan paused by a strange plant that had long, twisting vines with leaves that glowed faintly in blue. He studied it closely, noting the structure of its veins, the way its roots had formed in the soil. To a human, it might have seemed like mere observation. To someone like Lyra, it was proof of his intelligence, of his ability to see and understand. "You study everything, human," Lyra said from behind him, her voice soft, almost a whisper. It was the first time she had spoken without a trace of arrogance. Ethan turned his head slightly but did not stop moving. "I like to understand how things work," he said simply. "It helps me do my job." Lyra watched him. There was no flattery in his tone, there was no fear, just honesty. It was both frustrating and compelling. She had been trained to control, to command, to expect obedience. But this human gave her none of those things. "Do you ever speak for yourself?" she asked, a faint edge of challenge returning to her voice. "I do," Ethan said, "but I also listen." Listening is more important than speaking sometimes. Lyra frowned slightly, trying to understand him. She had never met anyone like this before. His silence in the palace hall, his calm in the face of offense, the way he carried himself, it was all foreign to her. Most beings would have argued, bowed, or tried to manipulate her, but Ethan did none of those things. "You are very young for your kind," she said finally, her voice losing some of its sharpness. "And yet you carry yourself as though you know everything." "I do not know everything," Ethan said. "I just know what I need to know, that is all." Lyra studied him for a long moment. Then, without another word, she turned and walked back toward the palace. She did not understand why she felt a strange pull toward him, why she could not simply dismiss him as she had with others. Perhaps it was his calm, or perhaps it was something deeper. She did not have time to think about it. She was a princess, and there were duties to attend to, decisions to make, and her reputation to maintain. Ethan watched her leave. He did not feel pride or victory. He only felt the quiet determination that had guided him through his travels. He had not come here to prove himself to a princess or anyone else. He had come to learn and to work, and that was what he would do. For now, the garden offered a moment of peace. The sunlight danced on the leaves, and the soft hum of alien machines in the distance reminded him that he was far from home. But he was not afraid. He was not overwhelmed. He was a human, capable and determined, and he would face whatever this world, or its young princess, threw at him. As the sun began to set over the alien palace, casting long shadows across the glowing plants, Ethan prepared himself for the days ahead. He knew that Lyra would not forget him, that the palace would whisper about the human who had ignored the princess and walked away without a word. And he knew that whatever challenges awaited, he would meet them with the same calm, quiet confidence that had brought him this far. For the first time in a long while, the human felt a strange excitement. This was not just another mission, another job. This was a chance to show what humans were capable of, not through arrogance or speech, but through action, knowledge, and a quiet courage that even a 19-year-old princess might one day recognize. Lyra sat in her private chamber, staring out at the pale light of her planets. Twin moons. The young princess could not shake the image of the human who had walked away from her. Most beings she had met in her life would have bowed, argued, or at least spoken out of fear. Ethan Clark had done none of these things. He had simply turned and walked away, calm and silent. Her attendants had tried to explain him away. "He is young, princess. Perhaps he does not understand your words," one had said. Another had added, "Humans are simple creatures. Do not let him bother you." But Lyra could not dismiss it so easily. There was something different about him. Curiosity gnawed at her pride. She wanted to know why he had behaved this way. Why had he not defended himself? Why had he not bowed? And most importantly, what made him so confident? Lyra had spent her life surrounded by respect and fear. She was used to people reacting to her, not the other way around. Ethan Clark had done something no one had ever done. He had ignored her. The next day, she arranged for him to meet her again. Not in the grand hall this time, but in the outer gardens where humans could not easily see. She wanted to study him without interference from her court. Ethan arrived as usual, calm and polite. He carried no weapons, no tools, only the small pack on his back and a notebook in his hand. "Human," Lyra said, her voice carrying curiosity more than irritation this time. "You do not fear me?" "I do not," Ethan replied. "Fear does not help anyone, it only clouds judgment." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "Do you know what you risk by saying that? You are in my world, my palace, my land. A single word wrong and your life could end." Ethan smiled faintly. "Then I will be careful with my words, but I will not lie either. That is all I can promise." The princess studied him closely. There was no arrogance in his tone, no flattery. He spoke with honesty. It was simple, direct, and yet it carried a weight she could not ignore. She had expected him to tremble, to speak quickly, to try to charm her. He did none of those things. "Why do you not speak more?" she asked after a pause. "Your kind usually talks too much. Why are you so quiet?" "I listen," Ethan said. "Listening helps me understand. Talking too much only confuses things." Lyra blinked. No human had ever spoken this way to her. She had been taught that humans were noisy, emotional, and simple-minded. This one was none of those things. He was young, yes, but he carried a calmness she could not explain. For hours, they walked through the gardens. Ethan observed the alien plants, the strange architecture, and the small creatures that scurried through the undergrowth. He asked questions quietly, jotting down notes in his book. Lyra followed him, sometimes speaking, sometimes watching silently. She noticed how carefully he moved, how he touched nothing without thought, how he seemed to see things others overlooked. A flower with glowing petals, a small rock with unusual patterns, a strange insect with delicate wings. Ethan studied them all as if they mattered. Lyra felt a strange feeling inside her. It was not anger, it was not annoyance. It was curiosity mixed with admiration. He did not flatter her, he did not fear her, he did not seek to please her. And yet he seemed to understand more about her world than most of her own advisors. "You are good at understanding things," she said quietly. "Even things that are not alive. How do you do it?" Ethan smiled faintly. "I try to see how everything works. Every part has a reason. If I understand the reason, I can understand the whole." Lyra considered this. It was simple yet profound. Humans had always seemed weak to her, fragile and emotional. But this human at 19 had a mind that could solve problems others could not. It was not strength or weapons that made him impressive. It was intelligence, observation, and patience. "You are different from your people," she said slowly. "Most humans I have seen are loud and careless. You are quiet, careful, and thoughtful." "I do not know about all humans," Ethan said. "I only know myself, but I believe every human can learn if they try." Lyra watched him closely. There was no pride in his voice, no arrogance, just honesty and confidence, and it was unsettling. She was used to people bowing, flattering, or arguing. She was not used to someone standing quietly and showing his value without saying much. For the next few days, she arranged small tasks for him, not tests of loyalty or bravery, but challenges for his mind. Strange alien machines that had puzzled her engineers, tools no one could repair, puzzles built from her world's unique technology. Ethan solved them all slowly, carefully, never rushing, always observing, always learning. The palace staff began to talk about him. "He is clever," one whispered. "Even the princess is impressed." Another added, "He is dangerous, not with weapons, but with his mind." Lyra did not like the word dangerous, but she could not deny it. He challenged her ideas without meaning to, simply by existing as himself. He had shown that humans could think in ways she had underestimated. That alone made him remarkable. One afternoon, she watched him repair a broken energy conduit. The device had been left untouched for years, abandoned by her engineers who claimed it was too complex. Ethan knelt beside it, carefully adjusting wires and components, his hands moving with skill and precision. In less than an hour, the device hummed back to life, glowing softly. Lyra could not hide her surprise. She had expected failure, yet he had succeeded. He had done what her most advanced machines and her best engineers could not. "You did it," she said, her voice a mixture of astonishment and admiration. "I fixed it," Ethan said simply. "It just needed the right approach." She wanted to ask how he had done it, but she also did not want to seem weak. Instead, she studied him silently, realizing that there was much to learn from him, not just about machines, but about humans themselves. Over the following days, Lyra watched Ethan closely. He moved through the palace, observing quietly, speaking only when necessary. He helped repair small machines, advised on repairs, and never sought recognition. Yet everywhere he went, people noticed. His work was not loud or flashy, but effective. It spoke for itself. Lyra found herself thinking about him more than she wanted to. She caught herself wondering what he was thinking, why he was so calm, and how a human could have such patience. She did not admit it to anyone, not even her closest attendants. But inside, she felt something she had never felt before, respect for a being she had once thought beneath her notice. One evening, she approached him while he was studying a strange alien plant in the garden. Its petals glowed faintly in the moonlight and its roots twisted like threads of silver. "Human," she said softly, "do you ever get tired?" Ethan looked up from his notes. "Tired? Yes, from all of this," she said, gesturing to the palace, the machines, the world around them. "From people, from work, from trying to survive in a strange world. Do you ever feel like stopping?" Ethan thought for a moment. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But stopping does not help. There is always more to learn, more to fix. That is why I keep going." Lyra nodded slowly. She had never heard such simple words carry so much strength. Humans, she realized, were not weak. They were persistent. They could endure more than her own kind sometimes, and this human, this Ethan Clark, was an example of that persistence. The days turned into weeks, and Lyra's fascination with him grew. She began to observe not only his work but his habits, his ways of thinking, and the quiet confidence he carried. He never boasted, never demanded praise, never tried to impress. He simply existed, learning and doing what needed to be done. For the first time, Lyra realized that humans could not be judged by their size, age, or appearance. They could surprise, they could endure, and they could excel in ways that even her advanced society could not predict. And Ethan Clark was the perfect example. One night, as she watched him repairing a small device in the garden under the twin moons, she felt something she could not name. Pride, admiration, perhaps even a hint of friendship forming in a way she had not expected. She knew one thing for certain. This human had changed her perception of her world and of humans in general. And she knew he was only 19. The palace was quiet in the early morning, the sun just beginning to rise over the alien landscape. Ethan Clark walked through the corridors, his pack light and his steps steady. He had grown accustomed to the sounds, smells, and shapes of this alien world, but he never stopped paying attention. Every detail mattered, every piece of knowledge could be important. Lyra watched him from her balcony above, hidden in the shadows. She had spent days observing him, learning his ways, and she was still curious. He did not act like any visitor she had ever met. He did not bow or argue. He did not speak unless necessary. And yet, in every quiet movement, in every thoughtful glance, he impressed her more than anyone in her court had ever done. Today, she had decided to test him in a way no one else had tried. It was not a simple repair or a small puzzle. It was a complex machine, one that controlled the energy flow for a section of the palace. It had been left broken for years because her engineers said it was too dangerous to attempt. Many had tried and failed. She wanted to see if Ethan could succeed where others had not. "Human," Lyra said as she approached him in the garden, her voice calm but carrying authority. "I have a task for you. It will not be easy and it may be dangerous. Are you willing to try?" Ethan looked up, meeting her gaze. "I am willing," he said simply. "Tell me what I need to do," Lyra nodded. "Follow me." She led him through winding corridors and hidden passages until they reached a large chamber. The machine in the center of the room was massive, with glowing conduits and rotating parts. Sparks flew from damaged sections, and a low hum filled the air. The energy in the room made the hair on Ethan's arm stand up. "This machine controls the palace energy network for the northern wing," Lyra explained. "It has been broken for over 5 years. My engineers say it is beyond repair. Many have tried and failed. It is delicate, dangerous, and extremely complex. If it fails while you work, it could collapse part of the palace." Ethan studied the machine carefully. It was unlike anything he had seen before, but he did not feel fear. He felt challenge, and he liked challenges. He moved closer, his hands hovering above the glowing parts, observing the patterns, the wiring, the flow of energy. "I will need tools," he said finally. Lyra nodded and provided him with a set of instruments. Unlike humans, the tools were designed for alien hands, precise and delicate, but Ethan adapted quickly. He picked them up and began examining the machine methodically. He did not rush. He did not panic. He simply observed and thought, planning each step before touching a single component. Hours passed, and Lyra watched him from a distance. The young princess had expected struggle, perhaps frustration, even failure, but Ethan's calm persistence was remarkable. He moved with purpose, analyzing patterns, testing sections carefully, and making adjustments with precision. At one point, a spark flew dangerously close to his hand. A human less skilled or less careful might have pulled away quickly or panicked. Ethan did not. He adjusted a small panel, redirected the energy flow, and continued his work. The machine hummed, flickered, and then stabilized slightly. Lyra's eyes widened. She had expected him to fail within the first hour. Instead, he had made progress that her engineers could not achieve in years. There was no arrogance in his movements, no boastful gestures. Only skill, patience, and intelligence. Several hours later, a small section of the machine came to life fully. Lights glowed steadily, conduits rotated smoothly, and the hum became steady and controlled. Ethan wiped sweat from his forehead but said nothing. He simply continued, focusing on the next section. Lyra could not contain herself. "You are amazing," she said, her voice quiet but full of admiration. Ethan looked at her briefly, then returned to his work. "It is not amazing, it is just understanding how things work. Anyone who pays attention can learn it." Lyra frowned slightly. His humility annoyed her a little, but it also made her respect him even more. Most beings would have boasted, demanded praise, or acted proud. He did none of those things. As the sun began to set outside the chamber, Ethan finally leaned back, examining the entire machine. Every part was working. Energy flowed smoothly, lights glowed evenly, and the hum was steady. He had done it. Lyra approached him slowly, careful not to startle him. "You have succeeded where my best engineers have failed," she said. "I do not understand how a human could do this, but you have. You are unlike anyone I have ever met." Ethan shrugged slightly. "I only did what made sense. I observed, learned, and applied what I knew. That is all." Lyra studied him for a long moment. There was something about his calm confidence, his quiet intelligence, and his humility that made her heart beat faster. She had spent her life surrounded by people who either feared her or tried to impress her. Ethan Clark had done neither. And yet he had achieved more than anyone else could. "You are dangerous," she said finally, half in awe, half in warning. "I suppose I could be," Ethan replied calmly, "but I prefer to help rather than harm. That is more useful." Lyra nodded slowly. She realized that humans, though young in galactic history, could be more capable than many ancient species. And this one human, at only 19, had proven it. Over the next several days, Lyra continued to watch him work. She assigned him other tasks, small at first, then gradually more complex. Each time Ethan succeeded. He repaired damaged devices, solved difficult puzzles, and restored systems that had been abandoned for decades. The palace staff began to talk openly about him. "He is incredible," one said. "Even the princess seems impressed." Another whispered, "I have never seen a human do so much. He is remarkable." Lyra paid attention to the whispers, but she cared more about Ethan himself. She found herself thinking about him when he was not around, wondering what he was doing, what he was thinking, and how his mind worked. He had changed something inside her, something she could not name. One evening, she found him in the garden again, working on a small device that controlled the garden lights. The twin moons reflected off the glowing petals of alien flowers, casting a soft light over him. He worked carefully, adjusting wires and panels, making sure everything functioned perfectly. "You never stop," she said softly. Ethan looked up. "Stop? Why would I stop?" "Even humans need rest," she said, curious. "Even the best workers need sleep and relaxation." "I rest when necessary," he said. "But I like to work. It helps me learn, helps me grow. I do not see a reason to stop if I am able to continue." Lyra watched him closely. His words were simple, but they carried a depth she could not ignore. Humans were different from what she had expected. They were persistent, clever, and determined, and Ethan Clark was proof of all of that. She wanted to ask him more, to learn his thoughts and ideas, but she also felt hesitant. He was a human and she was a princess. Their worlds were different, yet she could not deny the pull she felt toward his mind, his actions, and his calm courage. The next day, she decided to test him again, this time with a challenge of her own design. She led him to a large chamber filled with a maze of machines, wires, and energy conduits. The task was not just technical, it required strategy, observation, and patience. "This challenge will show more than skill," Lyra said. "It will show intelligence, judgment, and understanding. Many have failed before. I wonder if you will succeed." Ethan examined the room carefully. He walked slowly, studying each part of the machinery, observing how they interacted, how energy flowed, and where potential problems might arise. He did not rush. He did not panic. He simply thought, planned, and acted. Hours passed as he worked through the maze of machines, carefully testing, adjusting, and repairing. Sparks flew, lights flickered, and energy hummed, but Ethan moved calmly through it all. Finally, he reached the central control unit, the heart of the challenge. He studied it carefully, then made a series of precise adjustments. The energy stabilized. The machines hummed in harmony. The lights glowed evenly. The challenge was complete. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes wide with admiration. "You have done it again," she said softly. "I do not understand how a human can do this, but you have. You are beyond anything I imagined." Ethan looked at her and smiled faintly. "I only do what I can, that is all." Lyra studied him silently, realizing that she had learned something important. Humans were not weak, careless, or simple-minded. They could surprise, endure, and excel in ways that even her most advanced species could not predict. And Ethan Clarke at 19 had proven it all. For the first time, Lyra felt something she had not felt before: respect. Real respect, earned not through fear or obedience, but through action, skill, and quiet intelligence. And she knew this human would change the way she saw the galaxy forever. The next morning, Ethan Clarke arrived at the palace as usual. The air was calm, the halls quiet except for the soft hum of alien machinery. He had grown used to the palace routines, to the strange sounds and the weight of the alien world pressing around him. He moved with ease, carrying his small pack and notebook, ready for whatever task the princess would give him today. Lyra watched him from a distance, leaning on the balcony of her private chambers. She had spent days observing him, learning not only about his skills, but also about his habits, his calmness, and the way he thought. She could not deny it. She admired him. But admiration alone was not enough. She wanted to understand him, to see if he could be more than just a skilled human. She wanted to see if he could be a true ally, someone she could trust in her world. When Ethan entered the gardens, she stepped forward, this time without hesitation. "Human," she said, her voice steady, "I have a new task for you. It will not be easy, and it will require more than skill. It will require judgment, understanding, and cooperation. Are you ready?" Ethan looked at her calmly. "I am ready. Tell me what to do." Lyra nodded. "Follow me." She led him to a large room filled with complex machinery, more advanced and intricate than anything he had worked on before. The machines were connected in ways that were unfamiliar to him, energy flowing through conduits and circuits in patterns he had never seen. The challenge was clear. He had to restore the system without causing damage, while also understanding the logic behind its design. "This system controls the palace's environmental network," Lyra explained. "It manages temperature, humidity, and energy distribution across several sectors. It has been unstable for years. Many engineers from my world have tried to fix it, and all have failed. The system is delicate, and one wrong move could cause serious problems. You must observe carefully, plan your approach, and work precisely." Ethan studied the machinery silently. He walked slowly, examining each component, following the flow of energy with his eyes, noting where circuits were damaged or misaligned. He did not rush. He never rushed. He had learned that careful observation and planning were always better than haste. Lyra watched him closely. She expected him to struggle, perhaps fail, as others had. But he moved with confidence, calmly analyzing each section, making careful adjustments. He worked with a quiet focus that impressed her more with every passing minute. Hours passed. Ethan tested, adjusted, and repaired the system. Sparks flew occasionally, lights flickered, and the hum of energy fluctuated, but he remained calm. Each section he completed added stability to the network. He moved from one machine to the next with methodical precision, never panicking, never hesitating. Lyra found herself thinking about him in a way she had not expected. She had grown up surrounded by people who feared her or tried to impress her. Ethan Clarke had done neither. He had shown skill, intelligence, and calmness without asking for praise or recognition, and it was changing the way she saw humans. Finally, after hours of careful work, Ethan reached the central control unit. This was the heart of the system, the most complex and delicate part. One mistake here could undo everything he had accomplished. He paused, studying the patterns of energy, the connections between machines, and the flow of power. He made a plan in his mind, then moved with steady hands. Each adjustment was precise, deliberate, and controlled. Slowly, the system began to stabilize. Lights glowed evenly, energy flowed smoothly, and the hum became steady and calm. Ethan leaned back, observing the network as a whole. It was working perfectly. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes wide with admiration. "You have done it again," she said softly. "You have succeeded where my best engineers failed. I do not understand how a human can do this, but you have. You are unlike anyone I have ever met." Ethan looked at her and smiled faintly. "I only did what made sense. Observation, understanding, and careful action." "That is all." Lyra studied him silently. There was no arrogance in his voice, no boastfulness, only honesty and calm confidence. She realized that humans, though young in galactic history, could achieve more than many advanced species. And this one human, at 19, had proven it repeatedly. Over the next several days, Lyra began to involve him in more than just technical work. She asked his opinion on palace affairs, strategies for improving systems, and ideas for cooperation between her world and humans. At first, she expected him to hesitate, to be unsure, or to defer entirely. But Ethan spoke with quiet confidence, offering practical, logical suggestions that impressed even the oldest advisors. "You are not just skilled," Lyra said one evening as they walked through the gardens. "You understand more than machines. You understand people, systems, and the way things work together. That is rare in any world." "I have learned from humans and from other species," Ethan replied. "I try to see the patterns to understand how things connect. It helps me make decisions and solve problems." Lyra nodded slowly. She had always believed her people were among the most intelligent and capable in the galaxy. But Ethan Clark, a young human, had shown her something new. Humans were persistent, clever, and adaptable, and he had proven it through action, not words. As days turned into weeks, their relationship changed. Lyra began to trust him, not just with machines, but with her ideas and decisions. She asked him questions she had never asked anyone else, seeking his perspective on challenges that had puzzled her advisors for years. Ethan offered honest answers, never flattering, never dismissive, always thoughtful. One afternoon, a crisis arose in the palace. A minor energy fluctuation had caused several systems to fail simultaneously. Alarms blared, and attendants rushed to control the situation. Lyra immediately thought of Ethan. "Human," she called, "we need your help. The energy network is unstable. Can you fix it?" Ethan nodded and followed her. He moved quickly but carefully, assessing the situation. Sparks flew, lights flickered, and alarms continued, but he remained calm. He traced the problem to a single damaged conduit and began making repairs. Minutes passed, and the tension in the room grew. The attendants whispered nervously, but Ethan worked steadily, observing, adjusting, and testing. Slowly, the system stabilized. Lights glowed evenly, energy flowed smoothly, and the alarms ceased. Lyra watched him, heart racing with admiration. "You have done it again," she said softly. "You saved the palace without even being afraid." "I only did what was necessary," Ethan replied calmly. "Fear does not help in situations like this. Understanding and action help." Lyra smiled faintly. She realized that humans were more capable than she had ever imagined. They could endure, solve problems, and think in ways her species sometimes could not. And Ethan Clark was the perfect example. Over the following days, Lyra began to see him not just as a skilled human, but as a partner. She discussed plans, shared ideas, and sought his perspective on matters that mattered to her. Ethan listened carefully, offered thoughtful suggestions, and never sought praise or recognition. One evening, they walked together in the palace gardens under the twin moons. The soft glow of alien flowers illuminated their path, and the hum of the palace machinery was a gentle background sound. "You have changed the way I see humans," Lyra said quietly. "I used to think your kind was weak, careless, and simple, but you are different. You are brave, clever, and patient. You have taught me that humans can be stronger than we imagine." Ethan looked at her calmly. "Humans can surprise. We are young in the galaxy, but we learn quickly. We endure and adapt. That is all." Lyra smiled. There was something about his honesty, his calm, and his quiet confidence that made her respect him more than anyone else in her life. She realized that she could trust him, rely on him, and even admire him without fear or doubt. "You are not like anyone I have ever met," she said softly, "and I think I like that." Ethan nodded. "I am not like anyone you have met, but I am here to help, to learn, and to understand. That is what matters to me." Lyra looked at him, feeling a strange warmth she could not name. It was not just admiration. It was trust, respect, and perhaps something more. She realized that humans, though young and inexperienced in galactic terms, had qualities that even the most advanced species could not predict. And Ethan Clarke, at only 19, had proven that humans were capable of more than anyone had expected. As the moons rose higher in the sky, casting soft light over the gardens, Lyra and Ethan walked together in silence. Neither spoke, but both understood something important. A bond had formed between them, built on respect, intelligence, and quiet courage. And that bond would change the course of their worlds forever. The palace was quiet that morning, the alien sun casting long shadows across the glowing gardens. Ethan Clarke walked steadily through the halls, his pack light, his notebook in hand. He had grown familiar with this world, its machines, its people, and its challenges. But today felt different. Something in the air hinted at change, at a moment that could define not just him, but the relationship between humans and the people of Urendor. Lyra watched him from her balcony, her silver hair catching the sunlight. The young princess had spent weeks observing him, testing him, learning from him. Each day she had seen more of his skill, his patience, his intelligence, and his courage. But she had also seen something else. The way he acted without fear, the way he spoke with honesty, and the way he faced challenges without hesitation. He had earned her respect. More than that, he had earned her trust. Today, she had arranged a demonstration that would show the council and the palace attendants the true value of humans. A portion of the palace's defense system had begun malfunctioning, threatening the security of the northern sector. The human engineers had tried and failed to repair it. Lyra believed that only Ethan could succeed. "Human," she called as he entered the garden, her voice carrying both authority and anticipation, "we need your help. A critical system is failing. If it collapses, it could damage part of the palace and endanger lives. Can you handle it?" Ethan nodded calmly. "I will do what I can. Show me the system." Lyra led him through a series of corridors and hidden passageways until they reached the control room. Sparks flew from broken conduits, and a low hum of malfunctioning energy filled the air. Machines flickered, lights dimmed, and the attendants looked nervous. They whispered among themselves, eyes following Ethan as he walked toward the heart of the problem. He knelt beside the main console, examining the connections, observing the flow of energy, and testing circuits carefully. Nothing fazed him. Sparks flew dangerously close, but he moved with steady hands, adjusting panels and redirecting energy. Every action was deliberate, every movement precise. Lyra watched him from the side, her heart racing. She had seen him work on many machines before, but this was the most critical task yet. She realized that humans, despite being young in the galaxy, could handle challenges that even advanced species sometimes failed to solve. Ethan Clarke was living proof of that. Hours passed as he worked. The room was tense, attendants holding their breath with each adjustment. Ethan moved calmly from one conduit to another, fixing circuits, aligning energy flows, and testing the system. Slowly, the sparks faded, the hum steadied, and the machines began to function normally. At last, the room was quiet. The system was stable, lights glowed evenly, and energy flowed smoothly. Ethan leaned back, wiping sweat from his brow, but his expression remained calm. He had done it. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes wide with admiration. "You have done it again," she said softly. "You saved the palace, and you have done it without fear, without hesitation. I did not know humans could be so capable." Ethan looked at her calmly. "I only do what is necessary, observation, understanding, and careful action. That is all." Lyra studied him in silence. She realized that humans, though young in galactic history, could achieve more than many advanced species. They could adapt, endure, and solve problems in ways even the most experienced beings could not. And Ethan Clarke, at only 19, had proven it again and again. After the repairs, Lyra invited him to a private chamber, away from the council and attendants. She wanted to speak honestly, to acknowledge the truth she had discovered about humans and about him. "Ethan," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion, I have learned something important. I have underestimated humans. I thought your kind was weak, careless, and simple. But you have shown me that humans are persistent, clever, and brave. You have earned my respect. More than that, you have earned my trust. Ethan looked at her, calm and sincere. Thank you, Princess. I do not seek trust or respect. I only do what I can to help and to understand. Lyra smiled faintly. And yet you have achieved both. Your actions speak louder than words ever could. You have changed the way I see humans, and perhaps even the way my people will see them. Over the next few days, Lyra began to involve him in palace matters more openly. She asked for his opinions on energy management, engineering challenges, and even strategic planning. Ethan offered practical, thoughtful suggestions, never boasting, never demanding recognition, always observing and learning before acting. The palace staff began to notice the change. They whispered among themselves, amazed that a human could gain the confidence of the young princess. Some were skeptical, others curious, but all could not deny the results. Ethan Clark was not just a visitor. He was a problem solver, a thinker, and now a trusted advisor. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the palace, Lyra found him in the gardens, adjusting a small energy conduit that powered the lights along the paths. The soft glow of the moons reflected off the glowing petals of alien flowers, casting light across his focused face. "You never stop," she said softly. "I work when it is needed," Ethan replied. "I rest when I must, but I like to work. It helps me learn, helps me understand." "And it helps others," Lyra nodded slowly. "You have taught me something important, Ethan. Humans are capable of more than we ever expected. You have shown courage, intelligence, patience, and skill, and I trust you more than anyone in my palace." Ethan smiled faintly. "I only do what is right. Trust grows when actions match intentions. That is all." Lyra felt a warmth in her chest, something unfamiliar and comforting. She realized that trust was not given lightly, not even to her. But Ethan had earned it, not through words, but through consistent action, intelligence, and calm courage. The following day, the council gathered to observe the human who had changed their perception of an entire species. Ethan walked among them calmly, repairing systems, advising on technical matters, and demonstrating the value of human ingenuity. Attendants watched in awe as he worked, and even the oldest advisors could not deny the results. When the council concluded their observations, Lyra addressed them. "Humans, though young in galactic history, possess qualities that are remarkable. This young man, Ethan Clark, has demonstrated courage, intelligence, patience, and skill that surpass many seasoned engineers of our world. I ask that you respect and consider humans not as simple beings, but as allies capable of great achievements." The council members nodded, some reluctantly, others with genuine admiration. Ethan did not speak during the address. He simply stood calmly, letting his work and actions speak for themselves. Later, in private, Lyra approached him. "You have done more than repair machines," she said quietly. "You have repaired the way my people see humans. You have shown that we can trust and learn from each other. That is more important than any technical success." Ethan looked at her, calm and sincere. "I only do what is necessary. Respect and trust come when actions match intentions. That is all I can offer." Lyra smiled. There was something about his honesty, his calm, and his quiet courage that made her feel both admiration and warmth. She realized that humans, though young and inexperienced in the galaxy, could make a difference that even the most advanced species might not predict. Over the following weeks, the palace became a place of collaboration between humans and Urandorians. Ethan worked with engineers, advisors, and attendants, showing patience, teaching methods, and solving problems no one else could. The systems of the palace improved, efficiency increased, and the human influence became undeniable. Lyra continued to observe him closely. She learned more than just technical skill. She learned about his thinking, his calm courage, his humility, and his ability to inspire without words. She realized that humans were not to be underestimated. They could endure, learn, adapt, and achieve great things. One evening, as they walked together under the twin moons, Lyra spoke softly. "Ethan, you have changed my world and my perspective. You have shown courage, intelligence, and patience beyond your years. I am grateful for your presence here." Ethan looked at her calmly. "I only do what I can. Humans have much to learn, and I hope we can continue to learn from each other." Lyra nodded. She realized that trust and respect had grown between them, not through words, but through consistent action, intelligence, and quiet courage. Humans, she understood now, could achieve what others might think impossible, and Ethan Clarke at 19 had proven it. As the moons rose higher, casting their gentle light across the glowing gardens, Lyra and Ethan walked side by side in silence. They did not need words. They had shared understanding, respect, and trust. And in that quiet bond, both knew that the future of their worlds was brighter, stronger, and more connected than ever before. Ethan Clarke had shown that humans could achieve greatness through intelligence, courage, patience, and action. And Lyra had learned to see the true potential of humanity, not as weak or simple, but as capable of remarkable things. Together, they had bridged the gap between their worlds, creating a new beginning founded on respect, understanding, and the quiet power of human ingenuity.